Guys, this is Simon with Trade and Perform Coaching. It is Friday morning, the 1st of April. Welcome to a new month, new quarter. If you would like to join the room or like for to have a 3-day pass to the room, simply email me at tradeandperform@gmail.com. I will be happy to make arrangements for you. The cost of the room is $95 a month for screen access, and if you want the algos on your desktop, it's $250 a month. Speaking of which, Ron, if you'd like me to update the algos, just let me know and I'll send them to you. So let's jump into it real quick and just review how yesterday went. Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Etta. Good morning, Joyce. Anyone I missed? Roy, good morning. Good to see you. So let's just start from the top. So first of all, it's the last day of the month. Last day of the month generates odd PA, right? So we'll start with a yes. And just so you've got to be able to connect the high time frame to the low time frame to get the bigger trades, right? Just part of the requirement of the game. So, oh wait, this won't show it because I already adjusted the levels. That's all right. I've got Plan B. So let's go with charts. Yes, 0331, end of day. There we go. Okay, so here's a yes. And okay, so what you'll notice is, let me annotate this, is, okay, this is prior day's point of control, this area right over here. I don't know if it'll let me annotate it or not. We'll try again. This is prior day's point of control over here. This up here is prior day's initial balance, IB low from the first hour, the little white dotted line. Right there was also a blue zone. So that was the first thing that changed yesterday. If you're looking at character changes, was that's the first day we've held underneath the prior day's first hour low. It's been actually quite a while. So I think it's been 2 weeks since we've held underneath prior day's low. So that was the first clue that we might be able to go lower. So these are 15-minute bars, right? So this is the next day's IB. This doesn't count. This doesn't count until after the first hour, so approximately at 9:30. And then what you would expect is there's a 90 some odd percent chance that either IB low or IB high from that day gets broken, right? So how did the market trade? We opened up at 8:30. They attempted to hold that yellow zone, busted through, right? Came down into the single print. You'll notice it didn't make it quite to prior day's low. Responsive buyers back to the zone above. So these are 15-minute bars, right? Small rejection out. Then where's the natural magnet? So there's always going to be a magnet from prior day's low, but the prior day's point of control on both sides of that tape is always going to act as a magnet. We make a push into prior day's either TPO or volume POC. I forget which was which there, but they were close to each other. Reject back into the yellow zone. You can see the little wick there on the 15-minute. They attempted to hold it. We kind of balanced there. So you notice that we've already established by the time we made it to the prior day's point of control, that also satisfied the 9:30, the first hour IB stat where we took it out. So that stat had been taken care of. We made it back to the prior day's POC, rejected, and you can see we already auctioned down through most of the single prints, right? And what I said was in the morning is that it's really, even though I got stopped on my trailer on this trade, I was looking for the long out of this location, and they simply front ran the prior day's low. Everyone was targeting prior day's low. They couldn't get it, and they got squeezed out. Kind of sucks that I missed that trade, but that's how it goes. Roll down back into the single prints, right? Everything through except the back of that single prints reauctioned. We get below prior day's low. There's actually still a little gap there, and Dalton's gap fill. We find responsive buyers at Dalton's gap fill. Pushes back up. It looks like a 382 retrace at 12:30. Roll back down. Now this time we come into the zone. See how this is, if you look at this here, I'm going to, if you look at this, what the market's done is we've kind of taken it apart piece by piece. This is the thing that a lot of traders have a problem with is it's like, well, it bounced from the single prints. It bounced from Dalton's gap fill. It bounced from the anomaly underneath Dalton's gap fill. The blue zones, right? I expect attempted counter rotation there, but I don't expect it to be strong. So you'll see that was the end of the day. Did we get attempted counter rotation? We did. The bar closed right into that zone, and we got a 4 or 5 point counter rotation, and then it got flushed. Now, I would have expected this zone to hit. So someone could ask me, again, this is going back to the anomalies, well, that zone got flushed through. Well, it did. It's last hour, right? And you got to remember, the closer you get to the end of the day on the last hour, the more people are pressured to make trades if they have to close out positions by 3 p.m., particularly on individual names, right? So it overshoots a little bit, and you'll see that was the low. They also shifted the volume point of control to the low of the day on that move, and that was basically the low. We've been trending up ever since overnight. When you're up here, we're looking for trades that'll confirm our entry from location if you're thinking we'll push back to retest prior day's low or we're in balance, right? Like I thought yesterday, this would set up a head and shoulders right over here. So that's an idea, right? That's all that is an idea, a concept that we could go back and retest IB high or back into the prior day's point of control. If you've been trading for any length of time, that wasn't a crazy idea. So I'm going to shift back gears now. So if you take that out, and you go back to ES, I'm going to use the 8 tick. So this is where I was looking for, you can still see it drawn there. See how I was looking for the head and shoulders right over here? So now what you had to see, and what I said specifically was, so here's the difference between seeing a pattern that might be, right? A pattern that might be, and then using the algo to help you out to execute it. What I wanted was to stop this speed bar out right over here. This blue speed bar, call it a blue speed bar, that's the name of it, right? I wanted to get stopped out by at least a tick, close back in and trigger me for this push back up, and then clear these two parallel power bars up on top for a push back to the mid. So the advantage of having the algo is it simply never sets you up, right? See how you just don't get a response back in. So I'm going to show you what that looks like when it does work. Head and shoulders, head and shoulders. Let's see if we can find it alongside head and shoulders. Hold on 1 second. I know we have one. Let me pull this in a little bit. Oh, no. I see him short all the time, but that's because of my short bias. Okay, so we'll pretend for the sake of pretending that this is the setup that we're looking for, because this is a head and shoulders here, right? So not exactly the same picture or same idea, but close enough, right? You've got a left shoulder established through here. Right, there's a left shoulder. We took out the low. All right. Oh, we did get it. Okay, so see that blue speed bar right over there that has a power bar emblem right on the bottom? I want to get stopped out and close back in with another speed bar or a triangle up. Either one is valid, right? But it's preferable to get it all in one bar. So if you put a line there, you'll see that it got beat here. In this case, you needed the triangle up, so it's not as desirable because the stop is larger. But the important thing is the point of control beat the point of control of that trap bar to the left. This point of control right down here, just go slow. I realize I go fast and that is confusing people, so I'm going to slow it down. So this bar, right, was your last strong buyer on the left side of that head and shoulders, right? And it was traded in the direction that we wanted to go. So I wanted to get that guy stopped out. Mission accomplished right over here. Now I have two choices that I have to make from a strategy standpoint, right? Tactical standpoint. Execution wise and strategy wise, once the point of control got above, which happened on this bar right here, that was trapped and that became a valid trap back in. It didn't do it with what I would call an A++ setup, meaning this is just an A grade trap back into a speed bar, and I've been avoiding those for the most part. But it still has the process within it. Once you stopped out the buyer that was in your direction, you regained the point of control from the bar that was stopped out, which you accomplished right here right? If you took the long right there at 44.68, you were able to achieve 44.78. That's not a bad trade, right? So point number two, and I want to go back to this because I have a couple of people in here, Peter, Ron, Asim, that are swing traders, right? If you're going, let's say you went long down here for whatever reason in the world that you went long down here. You have a level, it's a NVPOC, or it's a low volume node, or whatever choice you take. If you're not entering up here, which is fine, I am, but you're still looking at it. If you went long here, you go, this is the guy I've got to beat. That's my last stopped out buyer. Once I get the point of control above, I really want to pull my hands off of my mouse, because the majority of the time, when I say majority, greater than 60% of the time, I'm going to get a big stretch. I'll define big stretch by 10 points or more on that trade, right? Now, for me, right, I like to keep my stops small, tight, and compact. Those three guys don't, that I just named. They actually use wider stops on their trades, which is totally fine. It's totally fine because they're comfortable with it and they have a strategy that lets them profit from that idea, right? What I want, what I would prefer, is I would take this trade, but I would take this trade on smaller size, right? Because my stop is larger than I want it to be. My stop has to go 1 point below here. So you end up with basically a 67 to 58. It's basically a 9-point stop and out of my comfort zone, right? So I'm going to take it small. So if I get stopped, it doesn't have a major impact on my day. If it goes up, I add a few shekels to the collection and we go from there. So this bar has everything I want in one trade. It stops out the speed bar to the left. That's a power bar. That's speed bar into speed bar. That's already by itself an A++ setup. Within that close, the point of control of the bar that closed back in beat the point of control of the bar that got stopped out, right? And my stop, instead of being 9 points, is now roughly, let's just call it 66 against 59 for sake of conversation, right? So it's 7 versus 10 or 11, or 9 and 11. I'm more comfortable with that idea. It's a 1-point stop. And really what you can argue is you don't want it to close back below the point of control of the bar that traps back in, but that's a deeper conversation. And now I do get my extension all the way up to what is eventually, right, if I enter on that bar, I get 66 all the way up to 94. It's almost a 30-point extension on ES. It's a great trade, right? That's back on the 324. That's what I'm looking for in a head and shoulders. So that's what it looks like when it sets up properly. This is what it looks like. Oh, here it is. And this is what it looks like when it simply doesn't set up. So see how that same point of control was hanging down there? I wanted to stop out that point of control. That occurred here, and then I needed the rest of the process. So what that saves me from, right, is just buying into a free fall where I just get smacked down, even though I have location. Okay. So does anyone have any questions about that process? Did that make sense to everyone? So and that all starts with recognizing that I have a potential head and shoulders, and if I break these parallel power bars, I could have a really big extension to the upside. That makes sense? Okay, that's what the most I want to show off of ES. I want to show the trades on NQ as well. So on NQ, really quick, going on the 24 Renko, the larger time frame bar. Again, what I'm looking for, see how I end up with, here we can even use the end of the day. See how I have a head and shoulders over here, left shoulder, right shoulder. So what I'd want to close out on the left shoulder, okay, is first of all I want to regain this left side so I can establish that I have a left shoulder, right shoulder, and the star is my target. Okay, why? I want to close algo into algo. So if you see this star right over here, okay, and I understand it was Asian, that was right at the close, so it was a little funky because technically they stopped it by a tick right over here to the left. But if you put a line underneath that left shoulder never got violated. This star, right, the wick of that star stopped out the wick of this star right over here. It closed back in, so the point of control is right here on this yellow line. Okay, and I'm going to have my stop about 1 point behind the low of that bar, or probably actually 1 point below the low of this 14,882. So to survive again, I don't take that trade into Asia, and I doubt we would have gotten this if it hadn't been that this was Asia. The Asia pushback down, they attempted to break that left shoulder again, and then you get the push out to the upside. That's the trade that we're looking for, and even within this closeout, you ended up getting star. If you look again, even let's say you did get stopped out, right? Because you put it right at the low. First of all, you got the extension up. They got you paid, right? Your entry on this bar would have been right here at 14,894, and you extended to 14,923. That's approximately 30 points or $600 a car, and more than plenty enough to get a scale off and protect your risk, right? But additionally, this is star. They get stopped out by speed bar. See, I got stopped out in the low. Now, what did I need to release? So this is speed bar into star. That's an A++ entry, but I have not beat the point of control. So if I enter on this trade, as soon as I have this point of control above on that next bar, I want to do as little as possible to let go of that trade. I want to basically cover the majority of my risk on the trade, or maybe even less. Maybe I just cover a quarter of the risk in case it comes back on me. But look at the rip that ends up providing is 92 all the way up to 60, right? That's $1,000 a contract, right? You didn't have to wait till late in the morning to get that. And additionally, when you look at that, what you're seeing is see how everything here was, look how big the waves down are. So this is additional information in terms of building a case for argument. Look how you can see the buyer stepped in there towards the end of the day. Like if you just pull that in, look how much of that was sell, 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 and then you see the buyers start to step in to turn that trade. And it was a slow grind. I'm not great at slow grind, but what I'm trying to get to is the point is where I get off my risk, and I know once they release that trade, meaning. So let me explain what I mean by release. I have a buyer. Okay, I have a buyer. I want that buyer stopped out. I have a point of control for that buyer. And then I want that point of control and the buyer regained, right? I want it regained with the point of control above, regardless of whether I have an algo set up or not. Let me show you what I mean by that. So let's give an example of where I didn't have a setup, or at least a traditional setup, right? I realize actually it's set up over here, but let's say it had not set up. When we're going up, see how there's no seller in this column as we're going up? This is my last seller. But there's other sellers that haven't been tested if I look to the left, right? This seller got stopped out, but so did this seller over here, right? And so did this seller over here, right? So the best choice is for a virgin, meaning untested seller, or the first time that seller got stopped out, and then to get regained. So this trader over here is virgin, right? It hasn't been stopped out. So it gets stopped out over here. That's the highest bar, has a down triangle on it. So that's my best algo that I have, being the highest up. And so what would tell me that that trade's going to fall away is if I can get a point of control underneath, which occurs right over here. It's the same for ES, it's the same for NQ. And I was talking to Bill yesterday because this was originally reintroduced into the room because what I was having difficulty with was getting what I was having difficulty with was getting people to get extensions, right? Everyone was getting the entries for the scalps, but very few people in the room are getting the 30, 40, 50, 60 point extensions, right? So this solved a lot of that problem for many of y'all because y'all are just simply can't argue with the fact that once it gets underneath here, right, we're getting big fallaways. At least count, my suggestion is 3 bars before you hit the button again, if not more, right? Or look for a reversal, or let those trades play out. It's so much money when you get that trade correct, taking off your risk. Don't be afraid to let the trade come back on you, would be my suggestion. And I actually got that from what's now been months upon months and quarters upon quarter of watching Ron do this, where once he takes his trade, he lets the trade come back on him, which sucks for him when that happens. But man, he's just been absolutely murdering it on these big extensions to the upside for quarter after quarter after quarter. but I couldn't figure out a way to, um, when someone presents you with evidence, right? So it's one thing. So Ron's doing it, but I don't trade like Ron per se. So I had to figure out a way for myself to be able to achieve that similar type of result, right? Because once you see that someone's able to do something, you know it's doable, right? And he's in my eyes, he was doing it on a regular basis, day in, day out. So it put me to work finding the solution. So I found the solution. Well, now really what Bill and I were discussing is what makes most sense on this is you initiate, and instead of scaling here, you should be adding to the trade. As a matter of fact, prior to this occurring, you should go smaller, then bigger on the trade. I don't have the formula quite worked out there, but the pushes away once you regain your stopped out buyer are significant. Like even in these little moves right over here. So see the star, right? So see it's speed bar into star. So normally, we'd be executing that, we'd be coming out pretty much right there, but this is the bar that beats the point of control. If I exit here, there's another 10 or 15 points available to me here. It just gets me to take my hand off the trigger. And then over here, let's say I'm short, right? So let's say this is no, if I look over here, right, and I'm trading, and I go, oh, this is no supply, no demand on the edge, right? So Bill, if you're in the room, I don't know if you're in yet. This is what I was talking about in our conversation yesterday. I couldn't show you visually. He's not in just yet. But if you look, this is no supply, no demand, closed back in with a divergent bar, triangle down. So for me, it would be the triangle down. What's the last bar, high opportunity bar that hasn't been stopped out that you're trying to recapture? It's this down triangle right here. So the same, again, same concept whether you're trading ES or NQ. So why do I want to close out my position right here when I had the potential to gain? That's 14,940 to 14,856. That's another $2,000 a contract, hypothetically, right? And even if you're not capturing all of that, if you just capture an additional 30 or 40 points, it has a massive back end impact. Even if you're trading, what I said is that let's say you have someone that's trading just one contract, right? Well, when you close that one contract out, because you've got to start training your brain to take that trade, substitute a micro in, close out your position. Go ahead if that's what you need to do right now, but then throw on one micro and let it come all the way back. You're paying for the experience to train the muscle memory in your brain, right? So that's what we're looking for. So for today, that's all I'm going to cover. That's what I wanted to cover this morning. The release points are very, very important, and I'm probably going to start initiating at a release point. If I have location, but I don't have an algo set up, at location, I'll be looking for the release point to start putting a trade on. I'll do it very small at first until I get emotionally adjusted to doing it. Preferable is that I get an A++ setup, I get the release, and actually instead of taking off, I'm adding at that point. But it's going to take me a little bit of work mentally to get that done. But I know I know intuitively that's the correct thing to do at that point instead of scaling off. But there's a big step. That's a big step from going, hey, I'm just keeping myself from scaling everything to adding on that trade. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure I'll fumble a couple of times in learning how to do that. So when we look at today, coming into the day, first of all, we've already had, as you can see, pretty much yesterday's close was the low. Let's reset this on ES. There we go. So my guess is stops are sitting actually, and you can mark it off. They're probably sitting right behind this 15-minute bar. It's just a guess, but that's where the stops are. So I would look for responsive sellers once we get above that 15-minute bar. You can see we just pretty much re-auctioned that poorly auctioned area. But you can also see this whole thing all the way back up to 45.84 was poorly auctioned. So areas where I expect rejection. Prior days up until all the way through the day until our current IB is set. That IB low is valid in the first hour. I don't think IB low is anything special. It's okay. I'm totally open to the idea that we can re-auction this whole area because this whole thing was poorly auctioned, right? Obviously, there's a zone right below 45.26, I believe. Oh no, it's an NQ. So A Pierce below 45.26, I'd look for traps back long, back to the upside. The natural target is back into the prior day's POC, which was, did I forget to mark that off? I apologize. They shifted the volume point of control down to the low yesterday. I believe this is the TPO point of control, and this is the volume point of control. So to the downside, the volume point of control on prior day's low are natural targets. Underneath prior day's low, there has to be stops sitting there. Take the stops, trap back in. I think there's potential to come back to yesterday's IB, both the high and the low. So we'll see. And then, of course, prior day's high opens us up to retaking it. I didn't see anything bearish in the price action besides last day of the month. I made the mistake before of looking at the last day of the month and thinking it meant something relative to what we've been doing prior to that, and it's generally, that's been a wrong concept. Okay, so that's where I'm looking. And then if we do extend down, my key areas are 45.09 and 44.93 prior day's lows. And if we really extend 44.72, but we haven't been doing much more than 50 to the downside. So that's 45.45. You take out 50, it either brings up 45.09 or 44.93. Those are my, so 44.26, 09, and 93 are where I'll be looking for swings. Back to 45.80 to 45.90 would be my extended target back up for swing traders, right? On NQ. And we have a bunch of data this morning. I will let the first half hour go. I don't want to get stopped on a day where there can be a bunch of noise in the first 30 minutes on Friday, first day of the month, and try to figure all those different pieces out. So if you look at, NQ, excuse me. Here's NQ coming into the day. Let's reset this. You can see there's a bit more sellers there on NQ coming in early in the day. Again, I think the stops are sitting right below here. And this is the volume and TPO point of control. They didn't shift it down for NQ. So obviously two key areas where there'd be stops is above this 15-minute bar and below that 15-minute bar. And there's a zone right underneath. Again, I think you take out the low and it could set up a potential trap. Key areas for swings below 14,854 into that 42 to 28. And then it's a pretty big stretch, but it's 14,700. If we take the 14,800 and we're currently trading up 39 on NQ and up 15 on ES. So let's say we get a down 200-point day. That's puts us to 700 basically, which would stick us right into that 14,700. There's a prior day's low and there's single prints right above it. Makes sense to find responsive buyers. If it really gets sloppy, 14,635. That purple line should not be there. Sorry, I just forgot to erase it. It's a prior day's value area low. And then if it really, really gets bad, 14,572. But I don't see anything that would, the ranges definitely come in. I don't see anything that would make me think we're going to achieve those kinds of lows. I'm fine with it if we do, but I just don't think so. And then I think there'll be resistance at IB low. And we had a wide IB low and IB high yesterday, so I would expect IB high and prior day's high. You basically have to treat this whole thing from 1572 to 1595, that whole 30-point range. That's all one zone for resistance and obviously above an upside break. Does anyone have questions over what we're looking for today? Was I clear on the setups I'm looking for in the traps? If you look at this as more of a craft instead of I have to get rich quick scheme, you'll get better and better at it over time. Okay, cool deal. You'll get better over time, right? Look at it as a craft instead of YOLO. You only live once. Oh, yes. That is for the AMC guys, right? AMC and what's the other one? AMC and GameStop. I'm sure there's a couple others out there in there. So, at any rate, YOLO, it can be YOLO, just slowly work your way into it, right? So again, if you trade in the first half hour, you're willing to take the stops. I'm cool with that, right? What I'm not cool with is that you ruin your day taking stops in the first half hour when you should have waited till after the first half hour, right? So on tap we have Fed Evans is speaking. It looks like right now. We have Macro Ace ISM manufacturing prep, whatever that means. Some stuff coming out of the Biden administration. Brainerd speaks at 8:55. Fed Brainerd speaks at 8:55. 9 a.m. ISM manufacturing. And there's just enough noise between now and 9 o'clock that I'm just going to relax and let it set up for me a little bit later in the morning. I'm not bearish. I'm not bullish either, but I'm not bearish. Right? There's just nothing bearish about the way like these slow rolling down drawdowns or roll downs that we take. It's nothing. I just want to line up location with potential trade opportunity, and then what I'm looking to improve is my extensions. That's right now I've moved my extensions from my C game, meaning 30, 40, 50 point extensions on ES, 5, 10 point extensions on ES. Those are my C game. I think I've successfully, at least from a strategic standpoint, moved them to my B game, and my goal is to move them up to my A game and get paid better on that stuff, right? So I suggest you use the first half hour to get your brain in alignment with what you're looking for. So, like again, the last thing to get stopped out here, the lowest and gotten stopped out was this triangle up, right? So it got stopped, right? So if you look, you draw a line across, right? It got stopped. Draw a little line across on the 20. Point of control got above and push. I'm just trying to train my brain to do that. Over here on the 24, it was this bar right here, right? This bar, point of control, stopped out, regained, a little backside push, right? But now you get the push to the upside. On ES, again, let's play pretend land. And I'll stay on the 8 range till after 9 o'clock. If it doesn't set up, I'll drop to the 6. But if you look, so the long here, right, the long, this is my only thing I have that's gotten stopped out to the long side, right? So I need to get a point of control above. I'm not telling you to take every point of control above a guy who tried to push higher. I am saying at location, right, that you may want to consider it if you don't get an algo set up, that will tell you where the release is coming from, right? So I don't have that whole formula quite down yet on how I want to use that information. So right now, if that's confusing to you, just use it as you're already in the trade, it releases, ease up on the scale for 2 or 3 bars to let you get more P&L out of that trade before you just punch the whole button out, right? But the other flip side of that coin is let it come back on you. But if you start doing that, you're going to start getting this seesaw thing where some trades will just pay for themselves and some trades are going to give you big P&L instead of being in this constant scalp out, scalp out, scalp out mode and never getting those big extensions. So I'll shut up now. I'm going to stop this recording.